right, so I guess we can start. We'll just keep letting people in as they come in. So this is a frequent small group talk to support source analysis for inquiry session. And like I said, we're hoping for some dialogue and some workshops. So thank you for being ready to engage and for entering your name in the chat if you haven't already. So let's get started. Thank you for being here. Whether you're now in the live session or whether you're watching this in the recording later, because apparently some people are going to watch later. So we're going to introduce ourselves. We could go to slide 2 so people can see our photos. My name is Mar Estrada and my co-presenters are Logan Island.
Hi, everyone.
And Siddha.
Hi, guys.
And we're all part of the Read Inquire Write team at the University of Michigan. And some of you might have heard or maybe even used the Read Inquire Write curriculum, which is a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade social studies curriculum focused on inquiry. If we could go to slide 3. To tell you a little bit about this project, it's co-led by Dr. Chauncey Montesano and Dr. Meir Schleppergrell, both at the University of Michigan. And it's currently funded by the Library of Congress and the James S. McDonald Foundation. And in this project, we have partnered with teachers for over 5 years now to develop a curriculum that would support a wide range of students in engaging in inquiry of social and historical issues, but also reading and analyzing sources and coming to their own conclusions and writing their own arguments. So we have developed this curriculum and we have tried it extensively in classrooms. We have done research on it and on how it's working out, what improvements teachers were making, are still making, until we reached a point in which we felt that it was ready to share more broadly. So now it's freely available through our website and anyone can create a free account and have access to all of the curriculum materials and many additional resources that support teachers and students in using it. And we're actually going to aim to save a little bit of time at the end so that we can do a little exploration of the website and its resources while we're together and see what questions come up. But today, what we want to share with you, if you could go to slide 4, is one of those improvements and one of those realizations that we came to along the way of developing this curriculum, something that has become really important to everything that we do, which is this key takeaway here that embedding frequent small group talk throughout the inquiry process is key in supporting a wide range of students' engagement and learning. And I don't know if that's something that you already think and already do, or on the contrary, it may be something that you hadn't thought about and are intrigued as to why or how that would work, or anything in between. So we're going to share how we have incorporated this realization right into the curriculum and why we have thought it was so important to incorporate it and how teachers do it in the classroom. And then we're actually going to try it ourselves in a little workshop in the second half of the session. If you're watching this as a recording afterwards, there will also be a way for you to engage in a workshop-like way, especially if you have at least one other person at home or wherever you're watching to simulate that small group talk experience, but you can also do it on your own. So before we get there, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how the curriculum works. If we could go to slide 5. So the way the curriculum is structured is through short inquiry units, maybe 1 or 2 weeks long for each of them, and we call them investigations. And these investigations are focused on world geography for 6th grade and ancient world history for 7th grade. If you could click a bit more so those labels will show as well. And US history for 8th grade. They're also aligned with Michigan standards. There, I think you can click a bit more so that will show. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So there are 5 investigations per grade. Like I said, each lasting maybe 1 or 2 weeks. So this isn't something that would substitute for your whole or your full curriculum, but rather supplemented. And you could use it sequentially. There's a bit of a progression in terms of inquiry skills and reading level and the type of argument writing that students are doing. Yes, English learner supports, definitely. Um, we have new Arabic and Spanish supports as well, so that's great too. So you could be doing this like sequentially, following a progression, or you could mix and match depending on what you're teaching, what your needs are. And you can even create your own investigations using the structure and the tools from the Read, Inquire, Write curriculum that you'll find on the website. We could go to the next slide. So if we look at a single investigation, it's a cycle of inquiry in which if we start up there to the right, oriented content, the first stage is students get oriented to the particular content of the investigation. So in this session, we're going to use an investigation on South Africa as an example. So in the first stage of inquiry, students would make connections to what they know about this and extend their background knowledge and get oriented to what this inquiry is asking them to think about, which in this case is whether post-apartheid South Africa is living up to its promises 20 years after apartheid ended. And then the next stage is that they would read and analyze a set of sources, primary sources, secondary sources that provide different perspectives on the issue. And this is where a tool called the Bookmark comes in. It's a tool that we're going to use today. It's a tool that supports students in that complex process of considering what each source is, where it comes from, why it was created, what we can learn from it, whether it's reliable and useful to think about the central question of the investigation. So this is a stage that we're going to focus on today to illustrate this principle of frequent small group talk to support inquiry. So after students analyze all the individual sources, it's time to consider all the available evidence all together and corroborate across sources to think what we can conclude from these sources and what are different ways to respond to the central question. So this turns into a process of planning their arguments, what they will write, how they will write it. They look at sample writing to notice the structures of the argument and the language that they can use. They organize what claims they could make, with what evidence, with what reasoning, and finally they compose their arguments and they reflect on them. Is Bob Bain involved with this? He works with us at the School of Education, but is not directly involved in this project. But yeah, we try to learn from him and apply what we learn in this project as well. So as you can see in this circle, this cycle of inquiry that represents one investigation, here at the center is student talk and discussion, because we have found that students benefit from frequently talking together all throughout this process of investigation at all stages of inquiry. So we're going to see exactly how and why they benefit from it, focusing on this stage of reading and analyzing sources with a bookmark tool. So for that, let's hand it over to Logan and Seda.
Thanks, Mar. So like Mar said, the bookmark tool is really a central aspect of the Read, Inquire, Write curriculum because it supports students to work together and talk together as they read and analyze a set of sources. Here you can see the three parts of the bookmark. When teachers and students use this tool in classes, teachers will typically, or our teacher partners will typically print the bookmark out so that each student has their own copy to use throughout the investigation or even throughout the year. Like Mar mentioned at the beginning, we're actually going to spend some time today during the second half of our workshop trying out what it's like to use the bookmark. And in order to do this, everyone's actually going to need their own copy of the bookmark. To make this happen, Sada is going to, or maybe already has, place a link in the chat space that everyone will be able to use to download one directly to your computer. And if we could just take a minute to do that, it'll help everybody follow along and we'll be set up for the second half. Please let us know if you have any questions accessing the document.
I think you need to make it public. It's not
Yeah,
letting.
mine said access denied.
Okay.
Same here.
My apologies. Let me just change the setting real quick.
No need to apologize. I do this to my kids accidentally about every other week.
Thanks for understanding.
That is the truest thing I've heard.
Is it working, guys? Wait a minute. Someone tell me. Someone please unmute. Please communicate. A frequent sound every day in class.
Silence.
Yeah. That of silence.
Not working yet.
Hmm.
Mm.
Sada, is there anything?
Could you maybe copy that slide with the book? No. Oh, we have some slides with a bookmark that we can share as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna, how about I keep sort of just reviewing what the bookmark is and how it works. And when we get a link set up in the chat, Sada, if you wanna just give everybody a heads up.
Yes, thank you so much, Logan. Please go ahead. I think, yeah, here's another link. Please try that. And
Okay.
let's see if that works.
Bingo.
Hey.
Great.
Great.
Victory.
All right.
I'll just wait a minute while everybody has a chance to open it up. If you could give us some kind of sign or indication of when you're ready to go, I'll move forward.
Some thumbs up or something in the chat.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Lynn. Okay. Seems like everybody's opening it up, so I'll move forward and just quickly talk about each part of the bookmark and how each part supports students to think and talk together as they uncover meaning from a source. Part one on the slide is in the top left-hand corner, and the questions in part one guide students to talk with each other and answer questions about the origin of a source, who created it, what it is, why, or for whom the source may have been created. This is probably a familiar exercise for folks who use primary sources in their classroom. Part two of the bookmark, after students consider the origin of the source, they use part two to really focus on the source itself. Part two includes 4 different prompts, each of which in different ways help students uncover meaning within a source, and meaning that can help them understand and respond to the central question. The examples we're going to take a look at today focus on a central question related to post-apartheid South Africa, which is, has post-apartheid South Africa lived up to its promises? After students read and examine the source itself, supported by part two of the bookmark, students then use the questions in part three of the bookmark to again work and talk together as they consider and think about the relevance and usefulness of a source for responding to a central question. And like Mar mentioned, as a way to indicate how the bookmark can work to support students to engage in frequent small group talk as they read and analyze a source, we're going to show a few video clips of one of our teacher partners who's helped us develop and refine these tools using the bookmark in the context of, again, the South Africa investigation. And Sadaf, we could go to the next slide. Great. Sorry, I'm just gonna. So again, the videos we're gonna take a look at in just a minute come from one of our Michigan teachers using this investigation with her 6th grade students. This investigation, like all investigations that make up the Read, Inquire, Write curriculum, is organized by a central question. And you can see that central question at the top is post-apartheid South Africa living up to its promises. For each investigation within the curriculum, we also include a task that that's aligned with the central question and puts students in a position to develop an argument based on evidence in response to a real world issue. For this investigation, students are writing a letter to a textbook company that is working to revise their chapter on South Africa to include a chapter on the years after apartheid. And in their letter to the textbook company, students write an argument about whether or not post-apartheid South Africa has lived up to its promises. To the right on this slide, you can see the 4 sources that students use during this investigation to develop an understanding of the central question and respond to it. I'll briefly just mention what each one is. Source 1's an interview with a Black South African woman named Zandwa. And in her interview, Zandwa reflects on what it was like living in South Africa during apartheid and whether or not anything has changed in the years since. Source 2 is an article from the Atlantic Monthly by an author who at the time this was published, 2016, was living in Johannesburg. And in source 2, the author describes South Africa, what South Africa has been like since the years apartheid ended. Source 3 is another news article that reports on whether or not the conditions in South Africa have improved since 1994, and if so, for whom. And source 4 is an excerpt from a book written by a South African activist that was published in a South African newspaper in 2018. You can see that all the sources are relatively short, and that is true for the most part of every investigation with the Read, Inquire, Write curriculum, making it possible for students to do this work in class with each other. In the clips that we're going to take a look at today, the class and the teacher will be using the bookmark to think and talk about source 3 specifically. So Sada, if we go to the next slide. So here is a zoomed in picture of source 3. And everybody's going to learn a little bit more about this as we go. So I think we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Sada. So the teachers who we've worked with in the context of the Read, Inquire, Write curriculum inevitably organize the way they teach an investigation differently, depending on, for example, their students' needs, their goals, or their teaching style, their classroom context. But this graphic on the slide is just one way to imagine what it might look like to teach an investigation in your class in a 5-stage or a 5-day framework. You could take 1 day for each stage, or you could take multiple days for each stage. But within this framework, day 1 or stage 1 begins, like Mar mentioned earlier, with orienting students to the content, learning something about apartheid in South Africa and the years since, and just building background knowledge. Days 2 and 3 involve students reading, analyzing, corroborating sources using the bookmark, which is our focus today. And in stage 4 or day 4, students then shift to using what they've learned as they read those sources to develop arguments in response to the central question and preparing to write. And then in stage 5, students continue writing and reflect on each other's writing and continue with that process. Again, the clips that we're going to take a look at come from stage 2 or day 2 of the investigation, when students are using the bookmark to guide them to think and talk together about source 3 specifically. And Sada, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Logan. Again, sorry about my hiccup earlier. So Logan said that we're going to watch a couple of clips and from one of our teacher collaborator. And one thing I also want to add is that these videos are recorded during her first year collaborating with us. So it's her first time implementing these, this curriculum and this version of the bookmark tool. So we're gonna take it step by step. We're gonna review what each part of the bookmark does, and then watch a short clip, and then move on to the next part. And just quickly review what Logan just said. The first part of the bookmark asks students to read the headnote and attribution of a source closely to consider, for example, as you can see on the bookmark to the left side, who created the source, when and where the source was created, what type of source it is, and why it is created, or for whom it is created. So sometimes teachers call that the 5W question. So these questions serve to prompt students to think about the context in which a source is created, or the context of a source's origin. And as you can see in the source to the right side, from the circled part in the headnote and attribution, we can see that this is a source created by an author, international editor for working for the NPR organization. And maybe it's also important to notice that he also covered South Africa's first August election. So those are some examples of students circling when they are working with the first part of the bookmark. And another very important aspect, which is also the focus of today's talk, is that we built in this feature in the bookmark to explicitly prompt the students and the teacher to talk to each other, which is really, we thought would be really helpful for their learning and sense making together. So now let's move to the clip, enacting bookmark part 1. So I'm gonna play real quick and see if you can hear the video. So I'm gonna play a little bit of pause.
Yes.
All right.
Can people hear the voice? Okay, I see it. Thumbs up.
Did anyone have vocab questions? All right. I'm going to give you guys right now about 3 or 4 minutes to annotate. They circle the who, what, when, where, and why, and make sure that you're leaving yourself good notes as you talk about those with your partners. Okay, you guys have about 3 or 4 minutes. We've got who made it. We have where it was made. We have what is it. Okay, what about when it was made? When was this made? I only got 4 people who can find when. I don't believe you. Everybody can find when. When was it made? You know? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear Mina. Those people are talking. Steven? And what's important about 2014? What kind of notes should I leave myself here? What notes are we leaving for the date before? Okay, this is 20 years after apartheid. What I'm learning about is post-apartheid South Africa living up to its promises. I need to know how long after apartheid ended this source is. Has there been enough time for change? Okay? How much time has there been for change? This is 20 years later. What about why?
Okay, so that's the clip. And because we're a little behind on time and we really want to make sure that you have the opportunity to work with the bookmark in the workshop session. So I'm just gonna, instead of eliciting responses from you guys, I'm just gonna say that notice that she assigned students first in small group and gave them 3 to 4 minutes or so to work together while talking. And one takeaway from that could be that that contributed to student participation during the whole group time. So now let's turn to Logan for the second part.
And for the reason you mentioned, Sadat, and for the reason that Bookmark Part 2 in the clip that we have focuses on the third question on Bookmark Part 2, which prompts students to find sentences within the source that begin with transition words and introductory phrases, and then to pay attention to the key ideas that come after those transition words or introductory phrases. The video that we included is the first time the teacher has worked with this question with these students. And so rather than engaging in small group talk, the teacher works through this in a whole group context. And because our presentation is focused on small group talk, I think we can move on to part 3, Sada.
Yeah, maybe just say that part 2 of the bookmark has different questions that help students hone in on the meaning of the source itself. And yeah, what Logan's talking about is that particular question, students hadn't used it yet. So, but there are other questions like what are the actors in this source? What's the relationship between those actors? What do they think, want, or experience? That helps students just understand what the source is saying and how it can help answer the central question.
So Logan, did you suggest that we don't watch the second clip and move to the third part?
Yeah, why don't we move on to part 3?
Cool.
Sadat, there may not be anything you can do on your end, but if it's possible to turn the volume up a little bit from your side. But
I can't change the volume using the keyboard. Yeah, I'll try to talk louder. Yeah,
I can hear you.
Project the outer voice.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the third part of the bookmark. I hope you can hear me okay. So that's the reasoning part. And for this part, after they did the close reading and analysis of the source and the head note itself, we asked the students at the third part to take a step back and think more meta about the source, by which we mean, as you can see in the bookmark at the top, there are three types of questions we ask. First is what kinds of questions the students might have about the source. And the second type is about reliability of the source in answering the central question. And then the last type is how the source can help them understand the central question. And we know that the second reliability part can be a little bit tricky and challenging. So we provide different groups of questions to help prompt the teacher and the students to think about reliability in different ways. And just below the gray bottom, you'll see the three groups of questions. First set is focused on the author or the creator of the source, him or herself. Is he or her, is him or she, in a good position to know about the issue? Is he or she an insider or outsider, etc.? And then the second group of questions asks students to reconsider the context of the source, which is related to what they did in part 1 of the bookmark, and consider how those contextual factors may influence a source's perspectives. And then lastly, we ask students to think about how this source compared to other sources. For example, in terms of do they agree or disagree, or which one is more reliable than the other in answering the central question. And then also very important is we ask students to you can ask students to box information in the source that can serve as evidence for their argument later when they're writing. So this will be a record of their learning and will come in very handy when they're constructing their argument. So now let's move to the third clip of the same teacher.
All right, what's going to happen now, guys? I am going to give you about 5 or 6 minutes to work on the after you read portion. Okay, so what about this source makes it reliable? What makes it seem like we can trust it or that we can know the information is correct or not? Is there something about it that makes it seem like maybe we can't trust it? So that's reliable and unreliable. And then number 2 says, what is NPR's perspective on post-apartheid South Africa? Does NPR think that South Africa is doing better now, or do they think that they're doing the same or worse? Okay, I'm going to check in with you in about 5 or 6 minutes. All right, so take time, talk to your group, 5 or 6 minutes to talk about your after you read stuff. Does anyone have questions about why the source might be reliable, why it is a trustworthy or accurate source? Yeah. Okay, so it's giving us facts. It's giving us the statistics, Luke said. So that makes it seem trustworthy because it has facts in it. Okay? Anything else that makes it seem reliable? Yeah.
It was made by like a national editor, so the national editors could like change some false information into the correct.
Okay, so the guy who wrote it, he has a high position, he has a trusted position, right? So he probably knows what he's doing when he's reporting the data. So maybe he thinks it's reliable. Okay? So the guy who wrote it is trustworthy. Yeah.
What makes it unreliable is that it was published in America. Because it's published in America, there could be like certain like rural cities and some urban cities that could be totally different from this information.
Okay, so he might not know if he's not in South Africa. He might not know. Andy?
I don't know if it's Sam said, but it's published in America. Doesn't mean that he knows he could have gone to Africa and then got information about that and then came back.
What do we know about this guy, the author, that shows he might know something about South Africa? What do we know about him?
He read a paper about South Africa.
Okay, so just quickly wrap up so that we can move to the workshop part that Mark prepared. We think that those questions the teacher posed to the students are challenging questions, and the small group time for them to work and to talk with one another before the whole group talk contributed to, again, the same point I'm gonna just say again, contributed to a wider student participation. Okay, back to Mark.
All right, so now let's see if what goes on in small groups if we try it ourselves, and imagine what it might be like for the students. So let's try it out. And I'm gonna be like in the role of the teacher facilitating, you're gonna be in the role of students. So thanks in advance for playing along and for your cooperation. For those of you participating later, you can do this with someone at home, or you can just engage by yourself and do this little dialogue with yourself. So you're gonna need 2 things to participate in the workshop. One is a bookmark tool that you already have. And the second thing is another source from the South African investigation, which is source 1, interview with Zandwa. So for those of you here in the live session, to get to the source, to source 1, I'm gonna paste right now a link. Oh, Logan already did. So can I get some thumbs up or some confirmation in the chat that people are seeing that presentation?
Seeing lots of icons pop up in the document, Mark.
Great. So if you scroll down, you'll see lots of copies of source one. So just claim one that hasn't been claimed yet and write your name on top so that you can work on your own copy. And if you're watching this afterwards, then you can access all of this through the website. Just create a free account, and here on the slide you can see some directions on where to find the bookmark and where to find source one. All right, so let's start. Let's enter into classroom mode. Let's get, I'm gonna get my own source slide. If you could give, Sida, if you could give me slide 20. Thank you. All right, everyone. So let's get into our first source, source one, which is titled Interview with Zondwa. And the reason that we're reading this source is to help answer the question, is post-apartheid living up to its premises? So as you know, whenever we're about to analyze a source, we take out our bookmark. So please just have that side by side with your source if you can. And part one of the bookmark is analyzing the headnote and attribution. That's the first place where we want to look to get a sense of what the source event is and whether it's going to be helpful to our central question. And as we look at the headnote and attribution, we're going to be asking ourselves these questions from part one of the bookmark, which are: who said or drew or wrote this? When or where was it said, drawn, or written? What type of source it is? Why was it said, drawn, or written? And for whom? And anytime we find one of those details, we're going to circle it. And then we're going to think which of these details matter and why for our investigation. And we're going to make a note of what we think. So I'm going to do it first with the first couple of sentences, and your job is just going to be to notice what I'm doing. If you want to follow along making the same marks on your own copy or make your own marks, that's great too. So, interview with Zondwa, headnote. This source is an interview with Zondwa. So I'm thinking that already tells me what type of source it is. It's an interview. So I'm going to circle that. I'm going to use this pre-prepared circle that I have here. Interview. Okay. Then it says, where am I? Zondwa is a Black South African woman. Okay, so that's the who, right? Let's continue reading. And remembers what life was like during apartheid. So I think that tells me who. It's Zondwa is a Black South African woman who actually lived through apartheid. She was there and she can tell us her experience as a Black person of what it was like. So that's definitely also something that I can circle. Let's put a circle in here, because this all seems relevant to our central question. She's going to be able to tell us firsthand about that experience. So I'm going to make a note of why all of this is important. And let's write Zondwa is a Black South African woman and remembers life during apartheid. Just gonna make this longer so it fits. Okay, so now it's your turn. So take 2 minutes individually and just use your own copy of the source and read the rest of the headnote and circle the parts that tell you who, when, where, what type of source it is, why it was created, like part one of the bookmark prompts you to do. You can make notes as well. So go ahead and work on that for 1 or 2 minutes. All right, so that probably wasn't enough time to finish, but you probably already have something to discuss with your small group. So let's just put everyone in random 3-person groups and just share with your group what did you circle and why does that detail matter, and make a note of what you think, because that's going to be helpful when you look back at the sources when you're writing your argument. So let's get into groups. Oh, I think everyone's here already. Sorry. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to share some ideas with your small group. Now let's look at the source itself with part 2 of the bookmark. So let's just do like a couple of sentences to see how that would work. And the bookmark says, use one of the questions, the question that's on the bottom right of your source. And if we look at the bottom right of our source, it says think, want, experience, which means we're going to be looking out for what Zandra thinks, wants, or experiences in this source, and underline that when we find that. So it says, I mean, as from 1994 up to this time, I feel like government has done a lot. So when she says I feel, that's sort of what she thinks. So I'm going to underline that because she feels that government has done a lot. And then she says, the houses, things like pension, social security income, there was a certain age for us Blacks that you could not get your pension, but now people get it. Even sick people get it. Back then, there was no such. That is why I am saying now, I feel government has done a great deal. Things have become better, man. So again, she's saying, I feel government has done a great deal. Things have become better, man. So yeah, I'm gonna underline that as well. I'm gonna say, she feels things are getting better, to remind myself. Things are getting better. So just take like a minute to skim the other 2 paragraphs to get the gist of what else this source says. And then we're going to go into part 3 of the bookmark and talk again in small groups. All right, so let's get into part 3 of the bookmark. Part 3 of the bookmark asks us to getting our groups and think, what questions do we have about the source? And how reliable do we think this source is for our central question? If you need ideas for reliability, you can look at the white box below, but you don't have to. And then how does this source help us think about our central question? What can we learn from it for our central question of whether post-apartheid is living up to its promises according to this source? So let's get into groups again for about 2 minutes to talk about these things. Okay, welcome back everyone. So that was a little just taste of what it feels like to be in a small group while you're analyzing sources. So no, in a classroom, we would now shift into a whole group discussion. You would share what you talked about in your groups, and we would build on that to, just to build our collective knowledge. And now let's just shift back into our teacher selves and think if my students did frequent small group talk throughout source analysis or throughout inquiry, what might they do? If anyone has any ideas, feel free to share. If not, just think for yourselves. Let's wait for like 10 seconds to see if anyone will share. Their formal English speaking skills would grow, says Amanda. They would need a way to keep themselves and each other accountable. Yeah, so probably wouldn't work the first time just like that. So with that, actually, we wanted to point you to some resources on our website. If we could go to slide 24, we have some resources to actually build the routines and norms and the classroom culture to make this frequent small group talk feasible and smooth. So you can check that out. We also have more resources to learn more about teaching with a bookmark. I'm actually gonna drop both those links right now in the chat. Kyle says they would need their teacher to work through the gradual release model of responsibility. Agreed. They would relate more to the text to form connections. They would develop skills in deciphering text. Yeah, so these are all things that might happen. The other thing that might happen is, as we saw in the video, when you come back to whole group, more students would have something to say because they discussed things and proposed things and heard things in their small group. So we're gonna leave you with our website, which you can explore. And if you wanna stay for a little bit more, we can have a Q&A. And thank you so much for being here. If we could have slide 26, there's our website and our emails if you wanna get into contact with us. Thank you for being here, everyone. And
thank you.
Feel free to ask questions, comments, etc.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have you had any teachers attempt to like use the bookmark, but with other sources that are outside of the curriculum? I'm just thinking for my high schoolers, some of the content doesn't apply as much, but the scaffolding would be really helpful for some of my EL students trying to access the same documents that are just a little bit too high for them at the moment, but I want them to be able to participate.
Yeah.
So.
Logan, do you want to answer that?
So Amanda, a few people have wondered the same thing, and we actually have a section on the website about how to integrate the disciplinary literacy tools like the bookmark into different source sets, like source sets that you might be using that aren't included within the investigations on our website. And,
okay.
Yeah, and before I was at the University of Michigan, I learned about this curriculum and tried to do the same thing. I taught high school history, and I used the bookmark to try and teach with some sources that I already had. So, yeah, I'll put a link in the chat to that part of the website.
Thank you. I'm very excited. This is the first one at one of these things that actually even had a little mention for English language learners. I was like, yay, this is why I'm here.
Oh, great.
Because I'm co-teaching with the social studies teachers this semester, and I'm just trying to figure out how I can help my kiddos. And I'm just like, because sometimes they get these assignments and it's overwhelming because I have kids all over the district, and it's nice to have something pre-made like this that I can just sort of teach them how to use, because I can't be there to rewrite every lesson for them. So as much as I would like to be that control person, but I need to let go sometimes. So anyway, I was very excited. So thank you. I was very happy to see that.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for your question.
Makes you feel any better. Part of the reason I never got my special education endorsement was because I knew I couldn't give up that level of control. So kudos to you to be able to.
It's a good personal growth thing for me. And I did get my own classes last spring because we had enough kids, but then the pandemic hit. So I got bumped back to, I've honestly been teaching more math this semester, and I'm social studies certified, which has been kind of hilarious, but also I now know geometry and algebra very well, trying to help my kids. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to check this out.
Thanks for being
See
here.
you.
See you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate, like, this is very usable, and yeah.
What do you think? How do you think you'll use it, Jill?
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah. So, I mean, I could see this would be very easily adaptable to a number of different sources. I like the fact that you give the students choice. So answer one of these 4 questions, or even when you don't. I mean, so they could choose which question to answer, or I could tell them which one to answer, depending on, I mean, there's just a lot of, workability there for a number of different sources that I'm just kind of seeing this could work really well. And also just the idea of having them working in small groups together more, though that accountability piece is pretty huge. I have 7th graders, so they, especially right before lunch, they have a little hard time staying focused sometimes. So yeah. So thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I'll be passing it along to my colleagues too.
Oh, yes.
So, okay. Well, great. Have a good night. Thank you for all your work and preparation and leadership.
Thank you
Thanks for
being
joining
here,
us.
Jill.
Yep. Take care.